Hello, everyone. I'm Amber Mack, president of Amber Mack Media, and thank you so much for joining us. I am so excited to be working with Salesforce today for the AI-powered future, unleashing digital labor for limitless potential. Around the same time last year, we hosted a similar event called What's Next for AI. I think we did a pretty good job of answering some of those questions over the course of the past 12 months and determining that the future is humans and autonomous agents working together. For today's event and in 2025, we want to answer this question. What if your workforce had no limits? That's the goal today. We know that companies want to unlock productivity beyond human capacity to improve customer relationships, but there is, of course, a lot of complexity. A lot of people have questions, and we're going to answer your questions today. Every single day, AI is becoming more and more part of our daily lives. We're entering a new phase, transitioning from knowledge-based generative AI tools to AI-powered agents. And we're hearing a lot of excitement from business leaders. In fact, according to a recent State of AI survey from McKinsey, about 72% of leaders surveyed said they're already using AI solutions, and interest is growing. That is why we are so excited to bring together this phenomenal panel who is going to help bring you real life examples of early adoption, where you can get started, and how to prepare your workforce for this AI powered future. So let me introduce each of our speakers today. First up, we have Vala Afshar, who is the Chief Digital Evangelist at Salesforce. Hi there.
Hi, Amber. Normally I'm dialing in from Boston, my home, but today I'm joining you from New York City. Glad to be here.
Thank you so much for being here. We are excited to have you. We also have Andrew Merrick, Chief Growth Officer and Chief AI Officer at Young Drivers of Canada. Hello.
Hi, Amber. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to join you, notwithstanding that it's cold, wintry outside, at least here. Hopefully we're going to have a good, warm, event.
I hope so. I am also in Toronto, and it was winter this morning and spring yesterday. So that's what we're having to get used to these days. And finally, we have Tom Hebner, VP Agentforce at NeuroFlash. Thanks for being here.
I'm very excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
First up, we wanted to dive into some housekeeping items. We want to make this as interactive as possible. So we really encourage all of you who are joining us today to prepare some questions that you can ask of our panelists. We're going to get to that towards the end of the session. So all you have to do is drop those questions into the little Q&A tab in Zoom. Leave your question there, and we will do our best to get those questions answered. Also, one little tip, it would be really helpful if you would put the name of the person that you want to ask the question to at the beginning of that question so we can be as efficient as possible. All right, let's get started. We have three themes today. The first theme is AI augmented humans. So we're going to start our discussion really debunking this concept that AI is here to replace humans. We know that customer expectations are on the rise. Customers want convenience, immediate responses to customer service inquiries, and personalized experiences. We know how important it is, of course, with AI as well, along with action to help us be more efficient, especially when it comes to some of those repetitive tasks. So Vala, I want to start with you and give you the first question. Salesforce is a prominent leader in the autonomous AI movement, launching AI agents to the market in September of last year. The fear that some people do have, and this is a common concern that I certainly hear when I'm speaking about AI, is that AI is here to replace humans. That's still a very common theme that we hear. How do you address this misconception, and what role should AI play in complementing human efforts rather than replacing them?
Sure. Well, thank you for asking that important question. My journey with Salesforce is a 22-year-old journey. My company and I started using the platform in 2003, believe it or not. And for 12 years, my company grew 4x in size as a result of using Salesforce. So I've watched a pioneer introduce cloud computing, mobile technologies, social technologies, a data revolution, and now the third wave of artificial intelligence, because the journey with artificial intelligence for Salesforce is an 11-year journey. So we started, and launched our AI research team in 2014. Our first acquisition was 2015. We introduced Einstein in 2016. We're the author of the first prompt engineering white paper in 2018 with our former chief AI officer, Richard Socher. So we've been part of the AI journey in the enterprise as I mentioned, 11 years. And it started, the wave one was predictive use of AI. How do we use data and information to predict outcomes? And certainly the last 3 years, we've been part of the generative wave two of AI, where we can now generate net new content. But during this, 11-year journey, we've become really good at understanding language, natural language processing. NLP is the science within the umbrella of AI that gives algorithms the ability to really truly understand language. And then evolving from that, reasoning logic. So coupling understanding of language and understanding reasoning. And it's given us this third wave of AI where we're giving agency to smart software. We call it agentic AI. At Salesforce, we call it Agentforce, where in contrast to co-pilots and generation of new content, we're now in a position where software is autonomously next to us, is doing the work. My company is no longer in the business of building software to give to humans so that the humans can do the work. My company now creates software that does the work. And we believe that, as you mentioned at the beginning, people and AI software together can create value at the speed of need. I think the biggest threat that exists when I think about this revolution, which I call electricity for the 21st century, I really don't know how you can compete and grow and thrive without AI. If you're not using it, you're going to be in the dark. You had mentioned words like speed and personalization and intelligence as you introduced us. Amber, these are the currencies that matter most to our customers, to our employees, to our partners. So to stay relevant, you have to deliver value at the speed of need. So the beauty of agentic AI, or what we call Agentforce, and we use words like limitless. What if you had unlimited labor force, where you can personalize customer experiences, as you mentioned, when you can accelerate research and development? Some of our clients in the healthcare industry, this is curing diseases. This is expanding our ability to have joyful life experiences, optimizing logistics and supply chain, automating complex decision making. It's incredible technology, and we believe that this is where 1 + 1 = 3. And so I believe the biggest threat to jobs is when a person ignores this incredible set of capabilities, and now they are competing with people who are more proficient with AI. I remind my 3 children, 14, 18, and 22, all 3 are digital natives, the importance of understanding how these incredible emerging technologies can help you be a better person, better employee, and better productive member of society.
Well said. I have one of those digital natives at home as well, so I certainly appreciate that. And I love what you said about AI being electricity for the 21st century. I think that's something all of us can really understand. Andrew and Tom, I would love to get your perspective on this. Tom, you're helping customers bring their AI agents from concept to reality. And Andrew, I know, in fact, one of those customers who has started putting agents to work at young drivers. This is what you're doing today. So, Tom, let's start with you in terms of following up on how AI can augment humans in the workplace.
It's a good question, and I love Vala's take on it. You know, the history is interesting. I put my first AI system live in 2001, if you'd believe it. I didn't even know it was AI. It wasn't called AI then. So I put a natural language phone system live for a phone company, and I ended up being the first one in the US. And it, under the covers, the technology that was making the say anything technology work was a support vector machine, which is what is today predictive AI, and it's still the same technology is still there. So when you say people are worried about humans being replaced by AI, That was 24 years ago, and there's a few million more contact center agents today than there were in 2001. So it didn't replace, I mean, or my career has been a failure, right? I'm putting AI to automate, and we have more people behind it. So the thought of it's going to replace people, I think, is a fixed mindset. So generative technology, Agentforce, and NeuroFlash, the NeuroFlash that I have behind me, the number one Agentforce partner for a reason. The founders of the company and me, we all worked at a company called Nuance Communications previously, and we built AI systems for large enterprises. Founded the company in 2016 as the AI partner for Salesforce a few months before Einstein came out, so people didn't know what we were talking about. When Einstein came out, suddenly we were a relevant company and became the number one Einstein bot partner. And then Service Cloud Voice came out from Salesforce, number one voice partner, and Amazon Connect with that number one Connect partner, and now number one Agentforce partner. And we were actually the partner picked to work in private beta. And we're not, the largest partner out there, but we are the one that really knows this space. We know how to use AI. We know Salesforce in that intersection. And when you talk about where this is going and how it augments humans and what it can do, the way I think about it is it really augments enterprises' ability to deliver service and deliver experiences. You mentioned at the beginning, Amber, this idea of personalized and frankly, very few companies do amazing service, right? And especially on the phone and on digital, they do effective service, but not amazing. And if you think about it, in our first pilots that are going live, like typically with AI automation, if you automated 30% of the inbound requests, you are doing a great job, right? 40% and something's wildly unique about you, right? Our first pilots going live, they're 70%, 80% automation. And these did not take us a long time to build, right? So it is really changing. So if you have a fixed mindset, you're like, oh my God, like our contact centers are going to lose all these people because it can do that work. Or think about it, what service can you really offer now? Now that AI is doing the heavy lifting, that wasn't that interesting before anyway, right? It wasn't the really strategic part of what you're doing, answering basic questions, being able to, replace your card, these kind of things. Once the AI can really do that and do it really effectively, now what can we do, right? So the way we're looking at it is, I built that first voice system in 2001. It wasn't until 2011 that we built one that was really amazing, right? We built one for the airlines that greeted you by name. And it was like the really incredible experience, like the really personalized experience on that technology. So now we're out here first building this. We're all learning together and trying it out. But really what we're targeting is when are we going to be able to build the best? How far can we push this experience? And when we look at and we talk to our customers that are in pilot, they're realizing that they have everything they need to do great. They have the data, right? They've already invested in Salesforce. They have the infrastructure. Now we have the actual technology that can tie that together and do it quickly. So it's been an incredible few months. We had the few months before Dreamforce when we were working with the private beta customers, and now the few months after to really get this real and see the power of the technology. It's been pretty amazing.
It's such great advice too. I love what you said about letting go of that fixed mindset. I think that's what a lot of people really need to embrace this year. Andrew, you've been waiting patiently, and you certainly have a lot to build on in this topic. Can you talk to us a little bit about the work that you're doing and further answer this question as well?
Yeah, the augmentation aspect is absolutely key. But let me give you some background in terms of what's happened with myself and young drivers. So my journey with YD started about a year and a half ago when I moved from a startup fintech to reinvigorate what was essentially an iconic Canadian brand that's more than 50 years old and has more than 1.4 million graduates. Well, the marketing team that reports to me did a great job. In fact, the job they did was too good last summer. YD went from an average 200 calls per day to over 600 calls a day, at 200% increase. This was great results, but this interest overwhelmed current resources and systems. The COO and I had extensive strategic discussions in terms of how to manage the surge, and we just made it through. The YD brand stands for intensive training that saves lives, not simply preparation to pass a road test. And unfortunately, during this surge period, unfortunately, some prospects confused convenience with what a brand stands for. So we really needed a solution. In this instance, we turned to Salesforce to develop a digital labor platform that could not only deal with the number one issue of surge capacity, but take YD's mission further in supporting customer inquiries 24/7 with multiple languages. So agreed, we have a situation where with regard to our existing resources, to the extent that we can develop those resources, we're all for it, absolutely. And we're going into this space that things are changing incredibly well. But that being said, those resources, they're not per se, they're irreplaceable in some instances. Some of the knowledge that they have, we can't simply move to another agent. In fact, to find people to train, to hire, to keep has been a challenge for us. So what we've done is essentially move to an Agentforce or an Agentive application that in one instance, a very basic instance, is Sally that answers every call with a happy smile, answers every call with intuition, empathy, and really takes the customer into that concierge experience that we could not do. And last summer, we were faced with monumental strategic challenges that really put us at the limits. Sally can take one call or it can take 1,000 calls and literally leave the person with that kind of, good experience. And anything that Sally cannot handle per se is then moved to those experts, the ones that have the expertise, the ones that have the knowledge. Maybe we call them edge cases, but literally these are the expertise that we have with regard to our sales and customer service reps. Another very basic example of an agentive implementation is with regard to our e-support. Our e-support tickets at one time were essentially on a daily basis in 3 to 4 figures. By implementing a basic agent, which we call Robin, Robin handles 80% of basic inquiries, whether it's from the students, from the parents, from our franchises, from even our staff. That kind of return is monumental, which would not have been possible without having an agentive implementation.
Fascinating. We do have to move on to the next section, but Andrew, just super quickly, I wanted to make note that you have a new addition to your title today, and I think it's worth mentioning because you fully embraced AI. I mentioned you're the Chief Growth Officer and now the Chief AI Officer as well. What has been the reaction from people in terms of the focus that you're putting on AI and that attention to kind of move forward fully, definitely not with a fixed mindset?
Well, thank you, Amber. I appreciate that. What it's been is that we're realizing not only with regard to the aspect of internal operations, we really start out with sales. We're losing sales, we're giving up sales, we're not meeting that customer experience. Number one was sales, then came customer service, and now we're actually with the teams, as I mentioned, as you indicated. The AI development team has been carved out. It stands on its own and reports to me. We're going to the area of enhancing our products with AI. This is something that it's funny how the paradigm shift has happened so quickly. People at one point in time, it was questionable when you'd speak to someone that would be an autonomous agent. Now it's almost an expectation. If we're a iconic brand at the cutting edge of technology, we don't have a choice. And essentially, a very practical example, many moms, it's the kids that don't call us, it's the moms that call us, and moms are time constrained. They're calling us from the car, from the vehicle as they're driving along. They want to be able to have a full, 360-degree experience with regard to answering their question, giving them support with regard to, yes, we have, the most important a person in your life. We take care of them. This is the kind of things that is now becoming I wouldn't say commonplace, but that's the expectation.
Absolutely. And Andrew, you just reminded me that I need to call you because my son turned 16 2 weeks ago and we have some work to do. So
there we go. We can take care of him.
Okay, so we're going to go into our next theme, but do want to remind people one more time at the end of this session, we're going to have some time to take your questions. So please do drop your questions into that Q&A tab, and we will do our best to get to as many as possible. Our next theme is transforming data into action. We know that data is the key to making all of this work, but with the explosion of customer data and the services to manage it, companies everywhere have trapped or have disconnected data that really prevents them from realizing realizing its full value across their business. So, Tom, I really wanted to start with you with this first question. You're speaking to so many customers on a day-to-day basis about these challenges. With customer data, like I said, scattered across multiple systems and services, how can businesses really work effectively to unify and unlock the value of their data to empower agents?
That's a great question. And this morning we signed our 50th pilot. So we're at we've been saying we're going to be 50 pilots, and it's getting closer and closer and closer. This morning, the 50th sign. So it's a unique thing I've never had in my career where you have this many customers starting with a solution at the same time that are so similar on a similar timeline. So the learnings are fast across all of them because it's all happening at the same time. And what we're seeing, and we have 50 pilots, and I'd say 7 or 8 are live now, taking traffic, and the rest are over the next couple of weeks going live. The ones that are able to move the fastest are the ones that have their data figured out. And not just figured out, but have actually leaned into Salesforce's infrastructure and how they're managing data. So the folks that had Data Cloud already and had data in Data Cloud already, had Data Cloud connected to their external data sources already, we're spinning up agents. I mean, it literally takes an hour to get one up to test. It's usually a couple weeks of testing and everything to actually get it live, but they're moved very quickly. The folks that have APIs from Salesforce to external data are the next fastest because we have access to the data, but we're finding with APIs, a lot of times there's the knowledge on what exactly is coming back and the data and the quality in the corner cases, because those APIs are used by humans and the humans do filtering and adjusting that isn't necessarily documented. So when you're working with this type of technology in large companies, you start discovering those things now when you're trying to apply AI to what's already there. So the API groups, we tend to move quickly there too, but we tend to discover more than the folks that already have Data Cloud because they've already gone through that. They've already pulled it into Salesforce, they're using it from objects, and they know what's going on. And the third level is the folks that we don't have connection yet at all. So then I was on a call with one of our prospects yesterday. They called it plain old software. Plain old software needs to be right for us to do this amazing agentics things, right? We need the plain old software to get to that data. So really it's how close or far you are from the data. And one of the things that we're seeing is this pattern we're seeing is a rise of the platform. And because to take the most advantage of AI, you want your people, your data, and your AI to be as close as possible together. So there's people have bought, and most of the folks that are doing pilots are in service centers and contact centers, is where we're starting because of the high volume, and they can do a pilot there and see what's going on. Most people that run these centers have bought point solutions over the years and grown up organically without these point solutions, and it's very difficult for them to take full advantage. So the folks that have leaned into a platform, have everything there, are going to have the best results. And the secondary thing we found with data is there's a pro skill in building agents. And Vala mentioned the guidelines for prompting, right? For writing prompts in Agentforce is called instructions to the LLM. And it's not just knowing how to instruct to get the answer, but it's knowing how to instruct so that the answer is a conversation. And there's a skill, a role called conversation design. And when I was at Nuance years ago, I ran a conversation design team. And back then they had to script the AI, right? It has this, then this, then this. Everything was very scripted as to what you said. And they wrote the words. Here's the words it's going to say. Now, with generative world, the generative AI says the word. So all these people said, oh, that job's gone. No one's going to be a conversation designer anymore. And it is the opposite, right? The conversation designer didn't just write the prompts. They understood the business process. They understood the data. They understood the flow of the company. It's much more of a system design type of job. So we've had a conversation design team from inception because we knew we were building bots. We knew we needed it. And so it's one of the things that's unique is that we bring conversation designers so that your data, because if you just prompt, I need this answer, you're going to get a flood of data back from the LLM that isn't digestible by your customer. You have to be able to turn it into a conversation. So that's really, it's interesting, multifaceted, nuanced type of situation. How close your data is to Agentforce, how fast you can move, how quality your data is, how good your conversations could be, and then how skilled your conversation designer is writing your instructions to really have your customers be able to effectively work with that data.
Also, a really good point. And I think it's the evolution of the roles, right? I mean, they're going to change, they're going to adapt and evolve over time. We have to remember that. Andrew, you kind of alluded to this already, but I know at Young Drivers, your customer service reps are dealing with a high volume of cases every single day, some with unique or specialized needs requiring that human touch. And you touched on that a little bit. Wanted to ask you a little bit further about that in terms of what are some of those best practices that you are able to deploy with your team to make sure that your customers are getting all of the information that they need? And how do you implement this along the way?
Well, I want to take off from what Tom was getting into from the aspect of the data. We found when we started looking at it and an enterprise level solution such as offered by Salesforce is that we had multiple data silos and they're all over the place. And we found, and to look at it, there was over 30 specific data silos that a sales rep and a customer service rep would either go to directly on a regular basis or need to consult, for those edge cases. The very first thing that we had to do was we had to unify the data. We had to make sure that instead of the sales rep having 3 screens open, 2 computers open, going to literally 4 or 5 different platforms that at one point in time made sense, and also having a spreadsheet so that they could, correlate the day-to-day data, we need to look at a unification piece. And that really drives everything. So the unification of data, and it's not in the instance of putting all the data into one sort of, bucket. It's just simply knowing where the data is. We've worked with a Salesforce partner by the name of MuleSoft for that aspect of a virtualized, what we call it, a data layer. So this instance with regard to being able to access the data quickly, irrespective of the 36 pots that they happen to be in, is what's really the very first thing that's driving the value that our sales rep and customer service agents have. Because they can look at the customer history. They can look at where the customer is in the journey. Are they still in an instance of online learning? Have they moved to in-vehicle instruction? Have their problems been encountered through in-vehicle instruction? Taking the data from the instructors, how is the student doing? All of this data literally now is able to filter up and be organized, with the sales reps and the customer service reps. This we did not have. And the more customers that we have and the more demands we have with regard to the products that we're rolling out, we find that this is ultimately, fundamentally, the very most important thing that we've, the key success factor or the best practice that we've adopted.
Well, you're sitting there listening to these stories, and I would love to get your opinion on what both of our other panelists have said, but also talking about what strategies can companies deploy in terms of setting clear boundaries for agents, ensuring that they are operating within scope, because I'm guessing that is probably a question that many of our attendees have today.
Sure. First of all, I'm amazed both Thomas and Andrew speak to numbers that are north of 80% resolution with agents. I ran a call center for 10 years. It would have been a dream if we could get to, again, I think Thomas said 20, 25, 30%. If a quarter of our workload could have been handled with intelligent software, I would have won awards, industry awards. So for those of you listening, these numbers are mind-numbing in terms of effectiveness. In fact, we're experiencing that at Salesforce, our help.salesforce.com, and we track it now weekly. We have over 30,000 conversations every week to our website, and we're scoring 87% first contact resolution with agents, which is north of 20 points better than the 25-year history of our company managing the site with people. So it's remarkable, and this is an initiative that started in October. I also love when Andrew talks about not just trapped data, because he talks about there's 18 different data silos that exist, but the fact that as Chief AI Officer and Growth Officer, Andrew and team are looking at the negative impact of trapped data and analyzing it so that they can recognize trapped value. When your data is trapped, and by the way, in a large enterprise, you have north of 900 enterprise applications, and 71% of those applications are not integrated. So most companies do not have a deeply integrated enterprise app ecosystem. So it's not just data that's trapped, but that trapped data means you can't deliver value to your stakeholders. So what Andrew was talking about with his team, understanding the 18 different silos and how quickly they were going to prioritize and implement agentic AI to accelerate value creation, he's in effect talking about trapped value analysis. And I think that's an important step for companies to take. The roadmap in terms of guidelines and making sure that you're not drifting away from your brand promise. Of course, at Salesforce Amber, trust is our #1 core value. And all AI projects are data projects. So if you don't have trusted data, quality data, and there's a shelf life with data. It's like that yogurt in the fridge that sits there after a month. It's not delicious anymore. You got to throw it away. So it's very true with data. So it doesn't matter if you have access to lots of data. Is it quality data, trustworthy data? Is it relevant? The questions I think business leaders need to ask is, first and foremost, what can AI do? Because as Thomas was talking about, this isn't a rules-based if, else, then a conditional logic that we're accustomed to. The software is reasoning on its own with technologies that I don't want to geek out on this call, but I am a nerd, and I say that affectionately to all nerds listening. When you hear concepts like RAG or vector databases or semantic search, retrieval augmented generation, these are all techniques that some are 7 or 8 years old, but they're relatively new, that allow us to reason. This is the only way we can get to 80% success with agentic AI, solving complex inquiries that are coming into Andrew's organization and mine, and the 50 pilots that Thomas is championing. So what can AI do is the first thing. Then what kind of infrastructure do you need in order to take advantage of this incredible emerging technology? And this is where technologies like data cloud, where you can access not just structured but unstructured data, is critically important. And then what kind of use cases matter most to you? How are you going to measure return on investment? At the end of the day, there are 5 attributes to agents. Jobs to be done. What are the jobs to be done? And this is for all skilled workers. We just gave some service and support examples. Please don't think that this is limited to the services function. What we're talking about will impact all knowledge workers at the highest level in any line of business: sales, service, marketing, engineering, development, human resources, supply chain. So the jobs to be done, the data you need to do the job, the actions you want the agent to take, and now really important, the actions you don't want the agent to take. So we call that guardrails. And then the channels you want the agent to operate. Is it TikTok? Is it social media? Is it your web? Is it your mobile app? All of these agents will have access to different channels to bring value and have conversations with stakeholders. Those are the 5 building blocks. And guardrails is one of the most important ones, because that's how you ensure trust stays as your #1 core value.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you for the 5 building blocks. And also, it's okay to geek out. This is a pretty so, you definitely have permission to geek out, and we appreciate it. Hard to believe we are over halfway through our session. So we're going to move on to our third theme. Reminding people one more time, we want to answer your questions. So please drop your questions into the Q&A tab and direct them at a specific person. That just makes it a little bit easier for us when we're doing the questions, because we want to get through as many as possible. So for our final theme, we're going to talk about closing the gap on the AI-driven workforce. We all know that technology is moving faster than ever, and it's so important to invest in upskilling and reskilling employees, and that is crucial in terms of this path towards an AI-driven workforce. The World Economic Forum is calling 2025 the year companies prepare to disrupt how work gets done, citing that by 2030, 70% of the skills used in most jobs will change. I kind of referred to that a little bit earlier when I talked about the fact that, it's about adapting and evolving along the way. When they looked at how executives and and leaders are thinking and feeling about this, 88% of C-suite executives globally say helping their business speed up adoption of AI will be important over the next year. And I'm sure that's why many people have joined us today. Andrew, I wanted to start our first question with you. How can organizations ensure that their workforce is aligned with and prepared for the adoption of AI agents in their daily flow of work?
Good question, Amber. And this is what we've done internally at YD. There's three things and three pillars. Essentially, deal with fear of the unknown. That's the very first thing. Second is change management, and the third is monitoring outcomes. So the very first one, the aspect of dealing with the unknown is essentially by encouraging a collaborative culture, encouraging teamwork between human agents and AI systems, highlighting how AI can complement human expertise rather than replace it. Part of that is ongoing support and feedback. We established continuous support channels and feedback mechanisms to ensure that the workforce adapts and the AI integration improves over time. Next part is, of course, the change management. And this came from the C-level to be able to communicate vision and benefits clearly, articulating how AI agents will support and enhance, daily workflows, and emphasizing the benefits for both efficiency and job enrichment right from the start, right to every individual. And then that was supplemented with the comprehensive training and upskilling, offering specific programs to equip the workforce with the skills needed to effectively use and collaborate with agents. It's still a steep learning curve onboarding agents, and they don't all work, and people have to be able to understand that, expect that, and that's really what comes from number three, the monitoring outcomes, the expectations. Not everyone gets it. Not all tools work. We're still at an early stage, and we have to recognize that. So what we've done is we've monitored the outcomes. We've adjusted strategies as needed, to ensure that the AI adoption aligns with our overall business goals and specifically employees, their expectations, and ultimately their performance.
Let's talk as well, just to build on that a little bit, Andrew. I wanted to ask Vala to follow up on that in terms of some of those key investments, initiatives, and maybe you could talk more about mindset, because I feel like that keeps coming up again and again. What is needed in terms of driving all of those things forward and developing a workforce that can thrive in an AI-driven future? I realize that's a big question, investments, initiatives, mindset. So it's hard to wrap it into one, but Vala, I feel like you can do this.
Well, I think you and I have talked about this. I think the most important skill in the 21st century is to remain teachable. You have to have a beginner's mindset where you challenge assumptions, you're curious, you're hungry, you're free of prejudice. Look, this is scary and humbling and exciting. This is truly blue ocean territory. I mean, to be able to think about digital workers and digital labor, to think that my son who's 14, in 10 years he leaves undergraduate or graduate school, and the likelihood that he's going to work with digital colleagues. He may have a digital manager. We have to challenge dominant logic to know that, you're looking at business leaders on the panel today. This is the last generation of business leaders who are only going to be responsible for managing people. We are going to have a hybrid workforce. And I'm not talking about hybrid in terms of where you work. I'm talking about people and agents, intelligent software. And so it will require us to challenge dominant logic. But, I view AI as my sidekick, my Jarvis, if you're an Iron Man fan.
The geek keeps coming.
I know. I can't hide from it. I'm totally a nerd. But I used to have interns when I was chief marketing and chief customer officer, leading large groups of organizations. I had bright men and women, typically graduate students. I'm in Boston, so from MIT, Harvard, some of the best institutions. I love being able to delegate to my incredibly smart interns and have them accelerate and supplement my research. So when it freed my time, it helped me focus on what was important. So if you have a curious mindset and you're not looking at this as a threat, you're looking at this as capabilities that can expand your output. 10 years ago, Salesforce recognized the gap that exists, the digital divide that exists, is a function of education. all business leaders listening to this, is your company providing training at no cost? Because the biggest cost is if you actually have an impediment, making it affordable and accessible to your employees, customers, and partners. We launched this program, as you know, Amber, called Trailhead 10 years ago. There's 23 million active learners on Trailhead, and they're getting their Agentforce badges. They're becoming agent blazers. We're talking about understanding generative AI modules, prompt engineering modules, data literacy, even knowing if the answer is the right answer. So critical thinking, chaos theory, system thinking. There's thousands of modules for free. And by the way, a lot of these modules are mandatory training for people at Salesforce. So all 75,000 of us have to build agents this year. All of us, mandatory. It doesn't matter if you're a chief evangelist or you're an intern that just joined. So there's this deliberate, unquenchable thirst for education. And that starts with a mindset, but it also starts with a culture where you embrace experimentation. People are not afraid of failure. They're afraid of blame. And this technology is moving really fast. So if you're a doer, you're likely going to make mistakes. Thomas with his 50 pilots, believe you me, the mistakes he made in pilot 1, pilot 5, pilot 10 are not happening at pilot 50, because I know Thomas, smart doers make original mistakes. So you have to have a safe environment to talk about these emerging technologies. You have to experiment with them. You have to have skin in the game, suit up and get in the game. Before we got on the call, talk about four nerds, all of us. And again, I'm saying this affectionately. All four of us were talking about, oh, we like Claude, we like Perplexity, we like ChatGPT, we like Gemini. We were literally going back and forth before we came live. Four of us talking about which language model we preferred for writing, for different tasks within work. And it brought joy to me because I realized I'm talking to practitioners. I'm talking to people that are using this. They're not just talking about it. They're not just reading it. Of course, that's not a surprise to me. But that's what you want to cultivate. You want to create that mindset where people are not afraid of experimenting. They have skin in the game. And you as a player coach are right there with them. This is not something you're going to delegate to someone else. Because if you do, very quickly, you're going to find out, regardless of what position you have in the company, you're not as relevant as you think you are. So please get in the game and enjoy what is a game-changing technology, something I've never seen in the 30 years of being a technologist in my career.
It is a pretty amazing time. I love what you talked about in terms of the fact that leaders need to get in the game, but I also love that phrase, remain teachable. I think if people can kind of plant that in the back of their head, it's a good thing for all of us to remember. Tom, wanted to ask you a question on what leaders should do. I mentioned the stat, 88% of C-suite executives prioritizing faster AI adoption. So what role do these leaders need to play in terms of balancing the speed, the cost, et cetera, of adoption along the way in terms of making sure that their workforce is ready?
It's a great question because there's have budget for it first, right? And it's interesting. This is the year of AI budgets. Last year was a year of AI talking about, and this is the year of AI budget. So there's people are understanding that this is going to change, and going to change everything that they do. But I think the more important part is understanding of the power and limitations of the technology at a level, because I get in conversations with executives that really say we can't have this hallucinate. It has to be accurate all the time without really considering how inaccurate the humans are that are doing those jobs are today, right? So the baseline is not zero. If the baseline's human, I don't know, Vala, you ran a contact center, 5%, 10%. Like we have QA people that QA other people, right? That quality check the conversations because humans are not perfect. Humans are fallible, right? So the technology is also fallible. This is something a conversation I've been in my whole career because I did speech recognition and voice recognition technology, natural language in the earlier days, predictive AI. And people would want it to be perfect, but humans aren't perfect, right? And actually, the actual understanding the words I'm saying, I think the machines are better than people now. But in order to give these complex answers and work with all this data you have in your business, it's going to be accurate at the level of human, and that's okay. That it's not going to be perfect all the time. So I think that's one leadership piece. The second is understanding where you really are in your own world, right? Because every company has superhumans within the company that keep it going. And they, because of the technology you've invested in, and in spite of the technology you've invested in, they keep it going. And AI exposes the in spite ofs, right? We rely on the because ofs, all this technology, then you're like, oh, this too. It's interesting. We're talking about kids, and we're talking about kids. I have a lot of kids, and my three oldest are in the workforce. They're off the payroll. It's fantastic. But our group chat is about Excel spreadsheet formulas. Still, like, my conversations were at Excel spreadsheet formulas when I started my career, right? And that's still what we're talking about right now. It's like, why are we talking about this? Just go to ChatGPT; it'll give you the answer, right? So, but they're still in it. Right, they're working at these companies and they're in finance jobs and operation jobs, and that's what they're focused on. Is they're still in a spreadsheet, still trying to get them. That's still there. Like, all of this is still here within every one of these companies, and getting to this future that Val is talking about, right? This digital workforce. There's work to do. So the leadership to understand you have this really powerful technology. It has potential to be as good as your best people, which does not mean it's going to be perfect, right? But it's going to have some gaps there. So have patience for it, but also invest in your own infra, right? Your data, your knowledge bases were built for human consumption and humans that can fill in the gaps. Now with AI consumption, they're not always perfect. Val said on these 50 pilots, a handful of them were rewriting knowledge articles so that it are actually more digestible by the AI, because humans were filling in the gaps that were already there. So I think it's that picture, right? It's, you invest in it, so have the money for it. Good. Know that it's not perfectly accurate all the time, but it's as good as your humans, and know that you have to invest in your infrastructure to make sure the data is there.
Thank you so much for that. I feel like I'm being a little bit greedy with our time, because I do want to get some final comments from each of you, even though you've already given us so much wonderful advice. And then I want to have time for some of the questions that have come from the audience, because I'm looking in our little group here and I have dozens and dozens of questions. So we want a bit of time to be able to ask them. So before we get to some questions from the audience, I would like to ask each of you to just summarize in 60 seconds or less, just everything we've talked about so far today, as well as your journey on this AI path. Andrew, if we can start with you, what are some final pieces of advice for our audience today?
If I had to start today, I would really do three things. One, ask myself if we are losing out on sales, giving a bad customer experience, or increasing resource expenses. I would then search Agentforce. I would go to Agent Builder, look for myself what kind of agent I could build. It's a great interface. It's really easy. You don't have to be techie to be able to do it. Or better yet, I would spend a few days at a Salesforce conference, to see examples of what applications, could be deployed. Then I would ask myself, what happens if our competition adopts this technology before we do? So we did this at Young Drivers of Canada, and I can say that the train is truly leaving the station. You should get on. In addition to our own efforts, an internal development team, Salesforce, its integrators, I2C, NTT, MuleSoft, Invigorate, are trusted partners that we've chosen to not only remain competitive, but to knock it out of the park. That's what we need. If you have any questions, let me know, and you'll see what we're deploying in the next few months. It's an amazing future.
Excellent. We definitely have some questions for you. So thanks to being open for that. Tom, over to you. Some final words.
Yeah, everything has changed. And Vala said the electricity, right? I put my first AI system live 2001, and then basically did the same thing for the next 20 years, right? In different form factors, put it on digital, put it on an app, but it was all the same technology, the same solutions. It was actually my oldest son had an internship at a life insurance company. I almost said the name, and he was working in Access databases. I was like, I started in Access databases. Like, what's happening? Nothing's changed. Time is a flat circle. So with this coming out, it changed everything, and it has changed everything, and we're seeing it already. And Val and I, we geeked out on the number, right? 20 to 30% to 70 to 80%, like literally flipped, right? Your automation level versus your human level is literally flipped, and that is, it's an incredible power, and the companies that do not take advantage of this will fall behind, either in cost or in service levels that they're able to give. So it's one of these things you have to get into, and it takes pro skills to do it well. And that's, I don't think, really well known, because it is easy and fast, but it's easy and fast to do really poor experiences. And we've already been called in to 4 of these pilots are saves, where folks try to do it themselves and they didn't like the results they were getting. So they brought in us to help get it over the line. And we were able to get over the line and teach them along the way. So I expect to see an explosion of new jobs coming from this. The conversation design, the new version of conversation design that I'm describing, is a job that's necessary. And the last piece is, because this technology, there's APIs, there's lots of options. A lot of people are doing it themselves. They're doing their own generative AI and putting these things together. Every customer that I've worked with that is trying out Agentforce and has their own is so bullish on us getting Agentforce doing everything because the tech debt is so much lower. Like the fact that it lives within Salesforce and it's access to everything your humans have access to. When you build on the outside, you're going to have tech debt every time. And I join these pilots thinking I'm in competition with these internal teams, and it has never once been a competition. It's been, hey, here's what we learned and we did this. I was like, oh, that's already taken for you in Agentforce. You don't have to do that part. But he's like, this instruction worked. I'm like, let me try that instruction. Oh, that's a good, like really collaborating with those teams because they don't want to maintain this thing that they built already, right? They already see how big it is. Say, if we can get it within the platform, it's fantastic. So if I'm going to do some final words, everything has changed. The where you're going to be in a year or 2 years is not even close to what it looked like for the last 20, where really things didn't change that much. And you're going to need pro skills. We're here, hire us until that gap is closed and people really understand how to do this. And Vala mentioned the trailheads. The trailheads are going to be exploding with all the things you really have to do to be effective. But in the meantime, we're very, I mean, you need a little bit of luck, but it's very strange for me. I spent the first half of my career building phone systems and no one wanted to talk to me at parties. Like I was like, no, I hate those things. And now I'm suddenly like, cool, I'm on panels and talking about this stuff. So it's been an awesome journey. So, but it's real and it's here.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Vala.
Who knew the hottest programming language is English? So yes, conversations do matter. I'll just build on what Thomas said. Everything has changed. This is not about new technology. It's about a new world. We're all on a journey of building self-driving businesses, autonomous enterprise. And when I often go to San Francisco, our headquarters, and when you're in San Francisco, you see robo-taxis, you see Waymos, and you're going to see lots of Tesla robo-taxis. And you quickly realize and appreciate an AI-first design strategy and how important it is. Because when you get into a robo-taxi and autonomous, and by definition, autonomous means machine-led, the first thing you realize is there's no steering wheel. Then you realize there's no gas or brake. There are no pedals. There are no mirrors. There's no side mirror. There is no back windshield. The vehicle doesn't need to look back. It's all projected on a screen, even for the passengers. So all of the human interfaces that require us to operate a vehicle in an AI-first design mind disappear. So as we design autonomous businesses, we're going to remove certain capabilities and functions that have been there since throughout all of our careers that are no longer needed. And the car will operate safer, faster, more effectively. So for those listening who are responsible, like Andrew and Thomas, building AI-capable autonomous businesses, we must bring an AI-first mindset in order to have a foresight to know what will a business look like 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now as this incredible velocity, speed, and direction of capabilities in this world of AI. And if we don't apply that AI first mindset, we're not going to be able to reach, in the automotive industry, it's called level 5 autonomy. So that's critically important, and it will require us to really think differently, I think designers are going to play a crucial role in terms of taking advantage of this emerging tech. And again, as I said, electricity for the 21st century. So have a sense of urgency about all of this. This is not blockchain, metaverse, quantum computing, AR, VR, cloud. All of these are important, but this is something different.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that advice. I think if I can just summarize very quickly. So we know from Andrew that the train has left the station. We're on our way. From Tom that everything has changed, not overnight, but it's certainly changed in 2025. And from Vala, we are well on our way to running our own self-driving businesses. So thank you so much for that advice. We have dozens of questions and maybe just over 5 minutes to get through a few of them. So I'm going to ask as many as I can. If you can be speedy with your replies, we'll get through more. So let's start with this question from Stephen for Vala, who says, I still have clients who think that AI is not relevant to their SMB. Can you recommend a good first step to help resistant customers adopt an AI approach?
Please invite us to provide reference accounts, to show other small, medium businesses using technology. We actually have an annual SMB report, State of the Connected SMB report, that speaks to AI use cases. This is the beauty of it. SMB can now compete with the largest companies on earth because you have a boundless workforce. So there's been never a better time, if you have a limited budget, limited talent, to be able to really flex and lean into technology to show superpowers. But as a former Salesforce customer, anytime I had doubt in terms of emerging technology and its impact, I would invite Salesforce to bring me on a journey, connect me with people that are doing greater work, and let the community help change minds with you.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. Question for you, Andrew, from Saharsh. With so much of agentic AI buzz, how are the C-suite agility, or how can the C-suite be more agile, I guess, to incorporate AI layers on the business process more critically? Can you dive into that a little bit?
In a very practical sense, there's sort of three tiers. There's the entry level, there's the specific individual AI applications. There is essentially what we're doing internally with regard to our build teams, mid-level applications, and their enterprise level applications. In a very practical sense, we've done all three. And it's an instance of literally having someone give the direction, the vision at the C level with regard to everyone, from the receptionist all the way through the C level to essentially have one of these three applications involving them. That's the instance with regard to commitment. That's an instance with regard to engagement. And once there's engagement, all kinds of uses, all kinds of ideas, start to flow. It's like a catalyst. It's amazing.
Excellent. We still have time for a couple more, so let's dive into it. Question for you from Fitsum. This is for Tom. Tom mentioned conversation designers as one emerging role. With the rise of agentic AI, what other new job positions do you foresee becoming prevalent?
ROI matters. It always has, but understanding it and doing analytics on it. So we call it data storytellers. Because agentic AI is non-deterministic and can follow so many paths, the analytics of it are a very different game. It's much more like analyzing human behavior than it is analyzing technology. So there is companies that do this, or they've been doing speech analytics and analyzing people, and they had a spot in any place that humans are doing work. Now that expands to the technology. So I think this analytics role and being able to not just point at it and say, this did this, but actually, what does that mean? And what do we have to do about it? How can we make it better? Where are the things for optimization? That whole thing, and it's almost an extension of this conversation designer. It's not just here's the numbers and how it performed, but here's the things it did, and then here's the instructions we can do to make it do better. Or here's what's doing amazing, and how do we replicate what's happening there? So it's this overlap, right? These distinct roles are blending, and I really think the hybrid person who can think through the analytics, tell a story from it, and then actually make it better and show it got better, that's the prime role that you're looking for. So I think that whole thing is emerging as well.
Thank you for that. I do want to try to squeeze in at least one more question. This is from MR, and I think it's something we haven't really covered in detail. What skills should we keep learning in the presence of AI to keep ourselves relevant and skillful? I don't have this directed at a certain person, but does someone want to give this one a whirl?
I think ultimately employers are going to look for two things, and I don't think it's going to change: time-tested uh, vetting process of talent, high rate of learning, and good judgment. So it's not just demonstrating competence and reliability, but also integrity and benevolence, which I think are the four components of establishing trust. So make sure that you're honest with yourself. Are you able to demonstrate high rate of learning? Are you comfortable with being uncomfortable? And do you have agency? I still believe I can is greater than IQ. If you have that can-do attitude and you're willing to raise your hand, even in the presence of uncertainty, companies like mine are going to want to bring you into our family. So have high agency, have urgency, be kind, be generous with your time and knowledge. The smartest person in the room is the room. And if you can champion that, I think you'll have a home regardless of any technology that we talk about.
Well, thank you so much. All wonderful advice. And thank you so much to our panelists for joining today. We do want to wrap up on time. So thank you to each of you. A couple of announcements before we let everyone go, just to remind people that there will be a recording of today's event. So please keep an eye out for an email in case you want to rewatch this session or share this with your teammates. A reminder as well to join Trailhead, of course, to start your AI journey. And thank you again to all of our panelists, to all of the teams, including the tech teams who helped to make this session possible. And most importantly, to all of our attendees who took an hour out of their day to really, move forward on this AI journey. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks, everyone.